place or thing. And specifically, we're talking about a noun named Elijah. And we're in the book of... Ooh. Kings! I heard a king. All right, we are in 1 Kings, 1 Kings. And today we're moving on. We've been in chapter 17 for a little while. Today we're going to go fast forward all the way to chapter 18. No, 18. 20 would be a fast forward. So 1 Kings chapter 18. Now, we actually are fast forwarding in the story. So let's back up a little bit and we'll review. You have a guy named Elijah who went to a king named Ahab. And Elijah said to Ahab, it's not going to rain for how long? He didn't say. He said, it's just not going to rain again for a while. I'll let you know. And then God told Elijah to get out of Jerusalem, or out of Israel rather, and to head to a brook called Cherith. Very good. And that was on the eastern shore of the Jordan River. And he was there for a while, and he had water to drink and McRaven. Right. There, you guys are catching this. And then after a while, the brook ran dry, and he had a cup of mud, and that didn't really quench his thirst. So God sent him where? Ooh, bonus points if you remember the city name. Zarephath. Okay, Zarephath was a city south of Sidon there along the coast. And he sent him to a widow lady named what? We don't know. We still don't have a name. So he goes to the widow lady, and he gets there, and he says, give me a drink. And she goes, I don't have much. And he says, well, while you're getting me a drink, give me some food. And she's like, I have no food. I got a little bit of flour, a little bit of oil. I'm going to make a cake. I'm going to eat it, and my son's going to eat it, and then we're going to die. Remember this? Very optimistic one. And Elijah made her a promise. How long would the flour and the oil last? Till the end of the famine. So this is the deal. And then we had the whole incident. Her son kind of up and died, and Elijah brought him back to life. Remember, that was pretty cool last week. Now we're going to fast forward. We hit 1 Kings chapter 18, and we're told this in verse 1. It came to pass after many days. How many days? Okay. Just making sure you're reading. So it came to pass after many days, the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the third year of what? The third year of many days. The third year of the famine. So when we last left Zarephath, it had been the famine been a while. We don't know exactly how long, but now it's been 3 years that there has been not a drop of rain in the region. Can you imagine? No rain for 3 years. Like the first year, we'd be psyched because rain days are second only to snow days on our list of things we don't like. But hot and no humid because it's getting drier and drier and drier, and all of a sudden New England would start to look like Phoenix. And the third year, we'd start to look like the Sahara. And so after 3 years, no water. Has it been a while? It's been a while. How desperate are things? Very desperate. I mean, you've got no water. Now, what you may not know is that the geography of Israel, a lot of the water is subterranean, which means it's underground. There's a lot of wells that run all through there, and so there's just a lot of the water is underground. But by the time you get to 3 years with no rain, guess what isn't even underground? Water. And so suddenly people are actually out hunting for grass, and they're out hunting for water. I mean, it's, instead of hunting for deer, we're hunting for grass. Instead of hunting for, whatever, we're hunting for water because we're going to look under every rock, we're going to look in every nook, we're going to look in every cranny, every cave, everything that might maybe possibly have water, we're going to go find it. And so we find this is exactly what's going on. Verse 3, Ahab called Obadiah, who was in charge of his house. Now, if you look at your table of contents in your Bible, you're going to see a minor prophet book called Obadiah. This is not the same guy. So please don't get confused. This is not the same guy who wrote a book named Obadiah. And so he calls Obadiah to him, and he says, now look, Obadiah, you and I, we're going to go hunting, but we're not hunting for deer, we're hunting for grass. And here's how desperate they are. The king of Israel calls the head of his household, and the two of them go separate ways hunting throughout the land by themselves, looking for grass. Why? Because they don't want to have to slaughter all their livestock for lack of food. But this is the situation they're in, that even the king does not have water. Even the king does not have food for his animals. And you would think, why doesn't he just eat the animals? But in this culture, the animals were the ATM machine. You just don't push it over unless you're really desperate. The animals are what provided the wool. The animals are what provided a lot of things that they needed. And so you didn't eat the animal except on rare occasions. It was not like they had a real meat-heavy diet. And so he says, look, Ahab says to Obadiah, look, we're going to split up. I'll head one way, you head the other, and let's see if we can find some grass so we can feed these animals lest we lose our animals. Because they've already lost a lot of their agriculture. They lose the animals, they have nothing. You can't make wool from a dead sheep. It just doesn't happen. And so this is the situation they're in. Now, the religious and political climate in Israel, you would think, now, if you were just as an outside spectator, that's kind of our role here, that if Elijah walks into Ahab's court and he says, Ahab, you are a dirty, rotten, filthy scoundrel. You are the worst king we have ever had. You have offended God, and God said it's not going to rain until he says so. And then he, of course, runs, because that's a pretty dangerous message. It's pretty much what he said. You would think if it hadn't rained for 3 years that maybe somebody in Ahab's court would say, Ahab, I don't know how to break it to you, man, but maybe you should think about talking to God. I don't know. Call me crazy. Just go talk to God. Maybe the two of you can sort something out, and we can have a drink. Wouldn't that make sense? Yeah. Is that what happened? No. Because look in verse 4. For so it was, while Jezebel, what? Massacred the prophets of the Lord. And so the political and the religious climate in Israel had only changed insofar as it had gotten worse. That Jezebel had now, Ahab was so fixated on grass that Jezebel was out literally massacring, slaughtering God's prophets. Obadiah was a good guy, though. Obadiah had managed to save 100 of them. And he put them in 2 different caves, 50 in a cave. And he was providing them food and water, and he was keeping them alive. Guess where that food and water came from? Think about it. Obadiah is the head of the king's household. What money does Obadiah have of his own? What water, what food does Obadiah have of his own? So the king was actually supporting the prophets, though I am quite sure he didn't know it. I don't know how Obadiah cooked the books, but he did. And so Ahab here doesn't realize that he is actually supplying and sustaining these prophets. So back to the story, they're out looking for grass. Obadiah's going one way, Ahab's going the other. And who does Obadiah bump into but Elijah? Now this had to be something. And so Elijah says, hey, Obadiah. And Obadiah's like, hey, Elijah, where you been? Because Obadiah knew Elijah. And Elijah's like, I've been around. Because he just played it off. Yeah, I've been kind of hanging out in Zarephath and, spent some time over at Cherith. And, it's been good. How are you? And you can see Obadiah going, not so good. Not so good. And so Elijah goes, well, do this for me, Obadiah. Why don't you go tell Ahab that I'm here? And Obadiah's response is great. Verse 9, so he said, how have I sinned that you are delivering your servant into the hand of Ahab to kill me? Elijah, I thought we were friends. What did I do that you're going to go send me to Ahab? He doesn't even know I'm like a God person. I've been hiding it, like Secret Service God thing, because like they're killing anybody who's public. What did I do to you that you're going to tell me to go and you're going to tell me to tell Ahab that you're here, and I'm going to go tell Ahab you're here, and by the time Ahab gets here, you're going to be gone? This is what Obadiah is thinking. And Elijah goes, no, don't worry about it. He goes, what do you mean don't worry about it? When Ahab comes here and sees you not here, guess who he's going to kill? Because he's going to want to kill somebody. He said, Elijah, what you got to understand is Ahab has gone to every kingdom and every nation in our region, and they've gone to the king and they have asked the king, where's Elijah? And when the king says he doesn't know, he makes that king swear an oath saying he doesn't know where Elijah is, but if he finds out, he'll let him know. Like, I don't know how email worked in this day, but he said, literally, he's been combing the entire region looking for you. And Elijah's like, well, he missed Zarephath. But Elijah's like, I will wait right here. I promise you, I will stay here. Go tell Ahab, I'm here. And when Ahab gets here with you, I will be here waiting. Because, there's no sense in Elijah really looking for Ahab when he could just stand still and Ahab will find him. And so Obadiah kind of hesitant. But he goes and he finds Ahab and he tells Ahab, Ahab, I know where Elijah is and he wants to see you. You think Ahab was interested? Because who was going to say it was going to rain? And Ahab was very interested in rain at this point. And so Ahab and Obadiah go running to where Elijah was, and Obadiah, or Ahab really, he goes to Elijah, but he goes there so Elijah can confront him. And this confrontation is really interesting. Verse 17. Then it happened when Ahab saw Elijah, and Ahab said to him, is that you, O troubler of Israel? Hey, you pesky person! Is that really you? You tormentor of an entire nation? You can see Elijah going, is that all you got after 3 years? Troubler of Israel? But Elijah answered in verse 18, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, in that you have forsaken the commandment of the Lord and have followed the Baals. And so Elijah's like right back at you, because I'm not the one who has troubled Israel. I am the one who delivered a message of judgment because you have troubled Israel by leading them away from God. You are really the cause of all this. Ahab has spent 3 years in denial. Elijah already delivered this message once. And then Elijah throws down the gauntlet. In verse 19, and he says, now therefore, send and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel. Not Caramel, this is Carmel. Most of you look at Caramel and say Carmel. It's actually Caramel. This is Carmel. The 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. And so Elijah says, hey, let's have us a competition. We're going to have us a religious competition. We're going to see whose God is God. Why don't you invite that witch you call a wife and her 850 false prophets and meet me, little old me, at Mount Carmel. And we'll have us a good old-fashioned throwdown. Now, sadly, I have to stop there because time. I love this story. Here's the thing. This is a transitional kind of section because that means that next week we're going to get into some serious throwdown. So you got to come back for that. Hold on. But there really is a point to this section. It's not just transitional. Most of Israel had followed their king. Was Ahab faithful to God or unfaithful? Let me try that again. Was Ahab, the king, faithful to God or unfaithful? Unfaithful, like staggeringly unfaithful, right? Like cataclysmically unfaithful. Like pick an adverb, unfaithful. Yeah, I think it's an adverb. All right. Maybe I need to go back to school. He was horrible. Now, on the flip side of that equation, you have Obadiah. Was he faithful to God or unfaithful? He was faithful. I mean, he was like hiding the prophets. He was doing God's bidding. He was, kind of secret service agent for God, man, but faithful. Was Elijah faithful or unfaithful? Faithful. Who had to carry a very important message that was not necessarily popular, but still necessary? Was it Ahab or was it Elijah? You guys are running out of gas on me. Who had to carry the message, Ahab or Elijah? Who had to carry the message, Ahab or Obadiah? Because in this story, we actually have two men, both of whom were tasked by God to deliver a message that was unpopular but necessary. Obadiah had to tell Ahab that Elijah was here, and Elijah had to tell Ahab, you're a jerk. Faithfulness did not guarantee Obadiah or Elijah safety. Faithfulness to God did not guarantee them the easy road out. You would think that since they were so faithful to God, that God would bless them and God would take care of them and their life would be good, right? Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Because God did bless them and God did take care of them, but their life wasn't necessarily easy. Obadiah having to tell Ahab that he knew where Elijah was could have cost him his life. Elijah telling Ahab that he was a jerk could have cost him his life. Faithfulness didn't guarantee an easy road. In fact, you could make the argument that faithfulness kind of earned them the hard road. Because God had important words to say, and He wanted somebody who was going to be faithful in relaying those words. You see that? So, many of you, most of you by now, because there was a lot of them out there, have a little invitation card. Or more. Is handing that card out going to be easy? No. It's a small piece of paper. It's a little thing. But you and I have been tasked by God to convey a message that is not popular but is essential. The question for us is, will we be faithful in delivering that message? Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. It requires faithful people. And we look at Elijah and we look at Obadiah, and I, like you, agree. I love this story. I love these characters. I mean, they're colorful. I mean, next week, a sword and a bloodbath. It's all coming. But this week, it's the hard road of the faithful messenger. We look at Obadiah and we respect him. We look at Elijah and we respect him. And the reason we respect them is because they were faithful to God and they delivered an unpopular message because God called them to do it. And they look at us and say, will you be faithful to deliver an unpopular message simply because you've been called to do it? Only you can answer that. But if Ahab was unfaithful and Elijah was faithful, I know whose life I would rather be closer to. Don't you? Anybody want to be a wicked jerk of a king? No. So therein lies our challenge. So, you have homework, and I hope and pray that we will all be Elijah-esque in our week.